Decorating for the holidays is a yearly activity that everyone in your family can participate in and enjoy. Here's how you can spruce up the light display in your front yard this holiday season on the cheap with some DIY holiday light balls. To get started, you only need 3 materials, one of which is optional. First, you need some outdoor string lights, approximately 200 lights per medium-sized ball. You're also going to need 1-inch hex mesh, which is also called chicken wire. They often come in 2-foot wide rolls, and you're going to need approximately a 2x4 sheet of hex mesh per medium-sized ball. And finally, you can use zip ties to secure the ends of the light strands to the wire mesh, but it's not actually needed. For tools, you're only going to need wire cutters or cutting pliers, but I would also recommend wearing gloves when working with the wire mesh, because when you cut it, it leaves rough edges which can and will snag and cut your hands rather easily. Start making your holiday light balls by unrolling and cutting the hex mesh into a 2x4 foot sheet. This will make a 2-foot diameter ball. The biggest mistake you can make here is being stingy and not cutting enough mesh, which will result in a more oval-shaped ball instead of a sphere. Once the mesh is cut, make a cylinder by connecting both short ends of the mesh. To fasten them, square up both edges of the wire and find 2 loose ends of wire that match up. Twist them around one another at their bases to help hold the cylinder shape. Now comes the tricky part, bending the cylinder into a sphere. This can take a little bit of practice, but fortunately, if you mess up, you can just unbend the wire and start over. Hold the wire mesh about 6 inches down from the top edge and bend in the top using your other hand. Next, hold the piece of mesh that you bent in while making a pleat with the mesh adjacent to it. In essence, you're bunching together an open end of the cylinder to help make a sphere. When the open end is bent in, place the cylinder on the ground open end up and step on the wire to flatten it and help hold its shape. Next, bend the opposite end of the cylinder. You can't step on this end to flatten it, but try to flatten the pleated wire as best you can. Now the wire likely looks like a slightly more rounded cylinder, not a ball. You must bend and shape it into a ball. This can be tricky, but should only take a few minutes. Finally, it's time to wrap lights around the ball of wire. Take the female end of a strand of outdoor string lights and run it through one of the hexagons. Pull it out of an adjacent hexagon to lock it in place. Optionally, you can use a zip tie to better secure this end. While keeping the strand taut, wind it around the mesh ball as evenly as possible. For a 2-foot diameter ball, you want to use between 200 and 300 lights. When finished, lock the male end of the strand in place the same way as the female end, but this time leave just a little bit of slack to make it easier to plug in. Hang these balls from trees, on your porch, or place them around the yard. Just keep in mind that you will need to run an extension cord to each ball, which can be a bit of a logistical nightmare, but knowing how jealous your neighbors will be makes it more than worth the effort.